Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. But before I jump into that, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, the people I'm interviewing, please leave a like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps out a ton with the podcast and also the people that are coming on the show. If you can go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, that helps out a ton as well. So without further ado, today's guest is John Costa. So he's actually in his second year of university at Toronto's Rotman Commerce program. He's actually aspiring for a career in finance or management consulting after graduation. It's great having you on the show, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max.
Awesome. So why don't we jump into a bit of going into your background, like I was talking previously before we jumped jumped live onto the podcast, was that I was wanting to maximize, I wanted to talk about how, students, university students, college students can maximize their time at university, right? Get the most out of it. So when they get their job, it puts them in when they're going to get their job, it puts them in the best position to actually, win that interview or maybe start as get onto a startup or whatever that nature is, right? So why don't we jump into a bit of a background, so for people that maybe don't know who you are.
For sure. So as you mentioned, I'm John Costa. I'm in my second year now at UFT, specializing in finance and economics at the Rotman Commerce program. A bit about my background: I'm originally from Lisbon, Portugal. I was born there, lived there for a few years, then moved to Brussels, Belgium, and completed my high school in Ottawa. So I've been a bit all over the place. And I think that really set me up in the right foot going into university. That adaptability, getting to meet people with different cultures, different ways of thinking, I think allowed me to open up my perspectives. And yeah, that contributed towards where I am today.
Okay, awesome. So pretty much you said you were born in Portugal?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, awesome. Then you emigrated, came to Canada. Okay, awesome. So pretty much when do you think that sort of started, was that interest in business? And like, did you have that from a young age, being like 6 or 7? Like, were you entrepreneurial, or were you always sort of thinking about, hey, I want to start a business in something? Where do you think that sort of came from?
Yeah, I always had an idea I would be interested in pursuing something that I'd be able to be my own boss and have control over the tangible results and really hone into my skills and leverage that when working. And business came up to be the right thing because I have that flexibility and the opportunity to decide what I do. But it actually sparked and further ignited in high school as part of the JA program, which is Junior Achievement. There, I founded a company, like small startups, kind of an incubator program, with a few mentors in Ottawa. They're all entrepreneurs and business development associates. And having their expertise when it comes to developing our companies really showed me showed me the different opportunities that there would be if I did pursue business further down the road. And having them as mentors enabled me to start LinkedIn at a young age, to know the different business programs at a young age, and that all led me towards the business route.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's actually talk about LinkedIn quickly. So yeah, you've been active on LinkedIn for, I think, like 2 years now, if that's correct. And you've been able to grow your LinkedIn presence, from 0 to, I think you have like over 7,000 connections, which is amazing. But what sort of, like, was there somebody that you sort of networked with that was like, hey, you got to jump on this, platform. It's going to be really good for business. Or was it so you just came across it on the internet and you're just like, what's this? And like, this seems interesting, and sort of just started. Like, how did that sort of start for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a bit of both. I've always known about LinkedIn from a young age, even back in Portugal. When I was in middle school, I knew of it. I never really thought I'd get it because I always thought of it as something for executives, maybe 10 years down the road. But only once I did join Junior Achievement, I realized that why not get it? The sooner the better. Reach out, build a professional network early. And having those mentors, as I mentioned earlier, they also led me through that path. They showed me that I should create an account, I should connect with people. So that's why towards the end of grade 11, start of grade 12, I did create a LinkedIn account. And since then, it's been thriving, mainly due to other involvements I'm in. So I kind of share some ideas and connect with people, go on coffee chats. It's part of the mantra for business students.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing. And that's one thing that I want to talk about a bit, is like the networking aspect of it. And you've been like maximizing that to like the full potential, right? Of like, I've seen some of the comments from other executives and CEOs that have actually commented on your some of your posts, right? And sort of, like what they've said and like about your LinkedIn. Like one guy was saying like, this guy, this guy's got a great LinkedIn game for being like, so young. But yeah, for somebody who's maybe listening about this and they're like, yeah, I've been thinking about getting on LinkedIn, but I don't know what to post. I don't know what to, like I'm in my, let's say last year of high school or second last year of high school or first year university. And they're like, I really don't like like they might be thinking like, oh, I haven't even started a job. Like, what am I going to post? What do people want to hear about what I'm doing? And I know what you're doing is you've tailored your LinkedIn. I don't know if this is correct, but this is just what I've sort of seen is more to university students, right? Networking amongst university students, right? So you're explaining like a little bit about what you're doing. You go on to a lot of, I see you go on to like a lot of debates and like, what would it be? It would be like, programs or something like. So like at universities, right? The competitions. I don't know why I was tripping up on that word, but competitions. Yeah. So I see that you go on a lot of competitions and you post about it, right? And you post about what happened. So is there any sort of perspective that you can give about, let's say somebody who's, 20 years old or 19 years old and how they can actually start using LinkedIn to their, benefit?
Yeah, first of all, no pressure. I think when you start LinkedIn, you don't have to connect with the CEOs. You don't have to connect and build a big network right off the bat. I think knowing what you're going to do with LinkedIn is the most important step at the start. Knowing what your end goal is with it, don't create it for the sake of it. I think if you have a goal in mind, whether that be connecting with upper years, connecting with alumni, and exploring different career paths, then follow that route when creating LinkedIn. And it's totally fine if you also don't have any professional experience. I didn't when I opened my LinkedIn. I had volunteering, I had that junior achievement program, and I put that on LinkedIn, which is perfectly normal. They don't expect you to have a lot of experience when you're 19, maybe even 20. So I think the sooner you start, like I said, the better. And part of it is also to grow and develop yourself personally and professionally. So that's something that you learn along the time you have LinkedIn.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Those are some good points. Yeah. Starting off that just like put down whatever you've done, right? Like if you worked at, let's say Walmart or you've worked at a restaurant or anything like that, just, you can show that or maybe you've done volunteer or anything like that, put that down. Cause that's, like you're saying, it's not like, the like let's say if an executive comes over your program, they're not like onto your profile, they're not going to expect you to be like, oh yeah, I've been running, I was CEO of a business for 6 years now, and now I've made a transition into private equity or something at like 19 years old. So yeah, putting down anything you have and just showing like I don't know, do you follow Gary Vee at all?
Gary Vee, yes.
Yeah.
The grind influencer, yeah.
Yeah. So I love Gary Vee from his perspective of he has really good advice in that just documenting your process, right? Like people are interested to hear what you're doing. Like if you're posting about like a core, like why you chose your course and like what have you experienced in your course, there's somebody who's in grade 12 that is actually actively looking for that information. And if you can be that source, they'll follow you, they'll follow your information. They might actually reach out to you. And the plus of that is that might actually be somebody that you partner on a business, or maybe, their network helps you with securing a job at, a firm or any, maybe another location, right? So now I want to jump to, so at high school, you said you were in the junior achievements program. Was there anything else that you were doing that was like you were in high school in Canada, correct?
Yes, in Ottawa.
In
I
Ottawa.
did the Ontario OCDSB, the program.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of extracurriculars, so I came to Canada when I was 11, and so I did only 2 years in high school here. And essentially when I first put foot, I was like, okay, I'm going to join clubs, I'm going to get involved. And so junior achievement was probably the easiest stepping stone, because there was already a program implemented in our high school. But then I realized there's so much to do outside of the school's limitations. So that's why I took on the case competition at Carleton University. I placed first. We were around 200 high school students in Canada. And so that showed me like, oh, I do have potential. I can go into business. And that further led me to also compete nationally at Skills Ontario job interview competition in Toronto. So I actually went to Toronto in grade 12. I placed third. Didn't make it to nationals in Halifax, but it came to show that pursuing a career in business would be of interest to me. And finally, I also joined Illuminate Universe, which is a non-for-profit education program. And essentially, I would help host a National High School Business Conference at Deloitte's offices in Ottawa. And there I met Deloitte partners. I got to know what the culture is like, and that also like led me towards pursuing a career in business.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, and the interesting thing too is like I know when I was in high school, I wasn't really like I knew that there was teams and like teams of that nature, like and there was more focused like around like for me anyway, it was more focused around sports. Like I knew that there was lots of sports teams and stuff like that that you could join. But there's this whole other avenue that probably people maybe don't know about is in the business area with like all these competitions that you were talking about, which is probably really fun to do is, you know, partnering with a few friends and, you know, going off and, you know, trying to win these competitions must be like really exciting, really fun. It's like the same as playing sports, right? But it's just in a different aspect of business. And I think that's going to actually, the business aspect is going to help you later on down the road with, you know, university and then getting a job, or let's say if you decide to start your own business.
Yeah. But Max, you mentioned a good point, and that is sports. I think being in high school, it's important to be as well-rounded as you possibly can. So don't limit yourself to whether it's just sports involvement or business. I think having the best of both worlds is definitely beneficial going into university, because you know that's part of your development when you're in high school. So definitely don't feel intimidated by joining all of these clubs and participating in competitions. It's great to explore them, but it's not, you know, deal breaker if you don't do it. But I think getting that exposure early on is important, but don't let it sacrifice other involvements like sports, as you mentioned.
Yeah, actually, yeah, like that's a good point to clarify with that is like not going to like, you can go too heavy or whatever you sort of decide, but yeah, like you were saying, it's better to actually be well-rounded at a younger age, because you're going to get more experience and more of different things. You're going to be able to taste more and sort of meet new people, right? Which is really important at a younger age for networking, and then also deciding what you want to do. And also from a point of view is like I've like on my podcast, I've had recruiters, I've spoken to recruiters before, and you know, one guy I interviewed, he started his own agency for recruiting, and he was saying like having a sports background or team sports background is actually a benefit, because they like, you know, like when you're hiring somebody onto a business, right? Like they like the aspect of, you know, people that played team sports, you know, playing in a competitive nature, right? So that sort of shows a bit of like, you know, they're able to play within a team, you know, contribute to a team and actually go hit a goal of, you know, let's say winning games or winning other, you know, championships or whatever of that nature. So now I want to jump to, so you're in your last year high school, choosing this course at Toronto U. So what was the deciding factors of you going down and choosing the current course you're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say probably the three most prestigious business programs in Canada are Ivy at Western, Queen's Commerce, and Rotman at U of T. There's also McGill and Sauder at TBC, but those were definitely my biggest indicators as to what would help me further propel in the right direction when pursuing business. And so what really made me interested in University of Toronto specifically was three main reasons. The first one being location. I thought being in Toronto would be very beneficial. Having, you know, being close to the firms and the headquarters and financial district would allow me to network very easily, go on coffee chats, a lot of opportunities when it comes to events, hosting employers on campus. So I thought that was a big selling point. The second one is obviously the international reputation that U of T has as being Canada's leading school. I'd also be able to gain exposure when it comes to meeting scholars, and internationally, if I do decide to live an expat life, I could also hone in on my academic background to further allow me to find opportunities professionally. And the third one is extracurriculars. So U of T is known for having so many different clubs as well, over 1,000 on St. George campus. And so that opportunity also came to show that if I do want to pursue a career in consulting, there's so much I can do on campus and get to meet so many people in such a large university that it would help me navigate in the right direction.
Yeah, no, 100%. And those were three solid points on that. And actually, I like how you chose that down to, you know, being in a location of Toronto. It has a huge benefit of just actually being in that location and being able to be around, you know, those businesses, like you were saying, you know, Bay Street and all those type of areas that, you know, that have, you know, high level firms that you're able to like, you know, network with, go for a coffee, have an actual, like when COVID wasn't a thing or after COVID,
Exactly.
actually being able to go on a one-on-one meeting with somebody in one of those firms is actually huge. And then also talking about the extracurricular courses is another great asset as well. So, okay, awesome. So why don't you take me through your first year now at university? What did you do to sort of maximize your time in your first year? Did you join a lot of clubs? Did you go to networking events on campus? How did you sort of position yourself to sort of maximize your first year at university?
For sure. So U of T does have a reputation for being very challenging academically. So I went in with the mindset that I couldn't overcommit to extracurriculars because there's a trade-off between the clubs you're in versus your grades and GPA. So I was very mindful of that, especially in my first semester at U of T. But that didn't deter me from joining clubs and also, networking, because at the end of the day, you're going into a business school. What's the point? What do you get out of it if you don't make those connections, if you don't get to meet people and learn? So I was mindful of that. And when I first started university, I did join a few clubs, namely the Consulting Association, the colleges. So U of T is divided into different colleges. And I was the first year representative at my one, which was the Woodsworth College. And that exposure allowed me to meet so many different first year students and really get to know students from so many different backgrounds, because U of T is very international. And having that opportunity really made me want to continue and further join more clubs later on. So I could say that to a certain extent I did overcommit towards the end of first year, but it was thanks to the original opportunities that I had that I was able to see that side of university.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Like that was a good point. You said you didn't overcommit to too many courses, right? Because it's like, it's the trade-off, like you were saying, between, your actual university course and getting good grades in that, and taking on too many of these clubs and other, other academical, tasks that you'll actually have to do inside those clubs, right? So I actually, one thing that just popped into my head quickly that somebody would probably want to hear was, so actually getting into University of Toronto, we're like taking a little step back here. What courses did you take to actually position yourself to get into that university? And what can somebody do in high school to actually take those courses and maximize those courses to actually get into university?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So in high school, the entire diploma, I took all of the fundamental courses like calculus, advanced functions, English. Those are all basic requirements. But on top of that, I also took some business courses, which helped show my interest in pursuing academic studies in that area, such as I did financial accounting, grade 11, grade 12. I did economics, I did business leadership, I did international business. So taking that variety of courses really showed the university recruiters that it's in fact a field that I'm passionate about and want to study. So that taking courses in those areas is something I highly recommend if your school offers those courses. But again, U of T is competitive. For you to have a solid chance of getting in, you'd recommend to have low to mid 90s. So definitely keep that in mind when applying.
Yeah, 100%. And I saw that on your LinkedIn, you had an average of 96%,
Yeah.
which is really good. So yeah, so having that's probably a big reason you got in. Was there anything else that you put like with your proposal to the university? Was there anything else you added to it? Besides the high school marks and the courses you were taking, did you add any like work experience or like I know you're in the junior league leadership or that sort of junior achievements. What else did you sort of add on to your sort of proposal to the University of Toronto?
Yeah, so the University of Toronto and Queen's Commerce, there are two programs that do require supplementary application, and for that I had to record a video interview as well as the written component. So I did touch on junior achievement, and in addition, I also came first nationally at the CPA Ontario Right to Ignite essay. That was an essay competition about cryptocurrency. And as a high schooler, winning that, especially for a big name organization like CPA, Chartered Professional Accountants, really showed that I was heading in the right direction and already making connections with people in the accounting industry in Canada. And so having that achievement, I think also helped propel me in the right direction.
Yeah, no, 100%. And somebody might be listening right now, and they might be being like, holy crap! Like this guy's, he has 96%. He's doing all these courses, which are like, like intense, and you're winning them. So that's probably one of the that's a solid reason why you probably got in. But I understand that they would probably like, even if you had low 90s, they'd probably maybe let you in with the alternative maybe course and stuff. So maybe somebody who's looking at you like doesn't have to achieve the same level of the same level that you got to get in, because they might be listening to you and being like, holy crap, this guy's like, he's crazy
Yeah.
with the amount of stuff he's doing. But like you were saying, it's like if you put your just paraphrasing here, what you put your max into like pretty much all of this, in high school and then into these courses to actually get in. So putting like everything you have into getting into university is probably a very good idea. But yeah, so moving on now, I want to talk about, so what have you seen and what have you done that has pushed you forward the most in your career development at university or maybe outside of university?
That's a great question. So as in career development through opportunities, or just through myself and things I've been doing?
Yeah, actually, yeah, no, that's a good point. Two points. So yeah, so career opportunities and then personal development.
Okay, so in terms of career opportunities, this past summer, I interned in a boutique private equity firm that focused on leveraged buyouts and investment mandates. And so through that experience, which I'm very grateful for, it happened during the pandemic. And I know the job market was rough during that time. A lot of people lost internships. My first one actually got canceled. And so I was fortunate to have that experience. And it indicated to me that there's so much I can do further down the road, whether it's finance or consulting. So to give you some context on what I did, I would have often calls with M&A advisors, investment bankers, find businesses on the market, as well as some portfolio management with commercial and industrial real estate. So I did a bit of both, M&A as well as portfolio management. So that experience was very versatile, and I think was a stepping stone towards my passion for consulting, because consulting, there's a lot of different projects, very client focused, and it has a good mix of hard skills and soft skills. So that is something that I've been learning recently, ever since my summer internship started. And then from a personal side, I think also reading is a big factor as well. I highly suggest reading the book from it's called TED, from the founder, and it showed me the importance of public speaking and selling your story. So storytelling, I find, is vital when it comes to interviews, when it comes to finding opportunities, because at the end of the day, what if you're not selling something, you are selling yourself. And that's a mindset that I've been taking in, whether if it's joining clubs, if it's meeting people, and it's something to keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I actually love that a lot, is like, yeah, maybe people don't realize is that when you're having these conversations, you're pretty much selling yourself, and an ability to have a skill to be able to communicate that well to an interviewer or maybe a business partner, or, let's say a client, being able to, position yourself well in that and be able to communicate well has a huge effect on whether you actually gain the client, right? Like you can be like one of the smartest, you can be really smart in what you're doing, but if you don't know how to communicate that properly to another person, then they're not going to understand, what level of like skills and sort of you can bring to the table, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, so I actually like that a lot. Going back to sort of like the career opportunity of getting that, position as a summer analyst, how did you sort of prep yourself for that interview to actually win that interview?
Yeah. So going even further back, in September of my first year and even December, I was constantly applying to find summer internships for first year summer. And as a first year, it's very hard to find those opportunities because you don't have much experience. You're relatively new to undergraduate studies. So it's definitely a grind to find something. So I would use the Rotman portal, U of T's portal. I would find opportunities on LinkedIn, which is very useful as well. So that's how I landed my first one, which was a business development role. And for the interview process, I think it's important to know the firm, know the person that's interviewing you, and finding a commonality. And so that helped me, be successful in the first 2 rounds of the interview and ultimately getting the job. But more recently, because of the pandemic and because it got canceled, I was left really rushing and trying to find something last minute. And thankfully, a friend of mine referred me to the managing director at the private equity firm. And so I got his email, contact information. So I sent an email with my resume. We scheduled a screening phone call, and then we had the actual interview. And for the interview, especially, this applies to university students as well as new graduates, is the commonality between you and the person that's interviewing you is the most crucial feature when it comes to an interview. For example, the person that interviewed me, he was a Rotman MBA graduate, and I'm in Rotman Commerce, so I'm in the undergrad side. And so asking him about his experience and what he learned from it and the takeaways was something that we could both relate on and have a meaningful conversation about. And so finding that intersection between your interests and their interests, I think really plays a pivotal role in landing, your dream internship.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what I've sort of heard from like entrepreneurs and other people I've sort of listened to and interviewed, is that like sort of they like if you're like if you're a motivated person and they like you, they can train you to do whatever, whatever they need you to do, right? Like if you have the skill, like if you have some of the basic skills and you're highly motivated and you're ready to get after it, they can train you to do that task, right? Or they can get somebody else to train you to do that task, right? But like you were saying, is like having that commonality is crucial, because like, when they're interviewing you, they're thinking like, does this guy fit well on the team? Is he going to fit well with working with, let's say Jeff or, Sally or whatever, right? Is he going to fit well in there? Like, do I like would I want to work with this person, right? Like that's another thing they're thinking about. It's not just, what grades you have or anything like that. It's like, would I actually enjoy working with this person? Do I think he would be a value to the team on, like, let's say the personal connective side, right? So that's awesome that you actually brought that up. Now I want to go to, so yeah, you're doing all this stuff. You're managing all your sort of time with, between school, these clubs. And then also, let's say during the summer, you had that job. So somebody might be wanting to know is like, how do you stay so productive? Somebody might be listening to this and they might be like, wow, that seems like a lot. And like, how do you stay productive? How do you sort of, manage your time and be the most efficient with your time?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I personally am still learning how to fully be productive and fully manage my time well. Uh, COVID-19 has definitely been a setback, not just for me, but for all students when it comes to learning virtually, doing everything online. And with that also comes an opportunity, which is the amount of things you can get involved with, taking more time for introspection and really knowing what your purpose is. So that's something I've been taking the time to also figure out. But to answer your question, when it comes to managing your time and being productive, I think prioritizing certain things is very important at the right time. I know a lot of people tend to say, oh, have a strict planner, do this, do that during the day. That's not exactly my mindset. The way I see it is, have an idea of what you want to do, but in the moment, prioritize what you know you will get done and what you think is necessary for you to be more prepared for tomorrow, if that makes sense. So I kind of go in with an open mind each day, and I have an idea of what I want to do, but not the time slots. And depending on my mood and just how productive I'm feeling specifically, then I'll allocate the right resources and time to devote to those certain tasks at hand. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So, one thing I've noticed and I use a lot is it's a calendar. Like actually scheduling things into your calendar is a huge benefit. Writing things down like a to-do list, and also getting things out of your head. Right, you might have a lot of thoughts of like, hey, I need to do this, I need to do that, and that takes up a lot of energy, and it can actually stress you and sort of bring down your productivity because you're taking mental power to hold all these things in your head. So what I do is when I feel like that, I pretty much just like regurgitate, like pretty much just vomit that all all onto a piece of paper, right? And just like write it all down, and just have that all down, and then and then my brain's like more calm, right? So like, do you actually use any of those skills? Like in the morning, do you actually like write down what you're doing? It because like I know for myself is like some days, you're gonna wake up and you're not gonna feel the most productive. You don't feel like getting some stuff done, right? So pretty much what I'll do is for my podcast, right, is like, what's the minimum I need to do to keep moving forward, right? To keep pushing that bar forward, right? And and then like, what are the most important to keep moving that bar forward? And then I do that. And then if I have like extra, if I get like, while I'm doing it, I have an extra boost and I get excited, then it's like, okay, what other goals can I hit? Because you like 7 days a week, you're not going to feel like, you're not going to jump out of bed at like 4:30 in the morning or something like that, or like feeling like you're going to go do all this crazy stuff. It's like majority of time is like people, and that's what I've sort of heard from other entrepreneurs is like, that's just something you manage, right? It's like you're going to go through phases of like, you're going to have 3-4 days of being really into like a flow state, And then, you might have 3-4 days of being out of that flow state. But, being consistent and pushing, one thing that I've learned is like being consistent and pushing your whatever you're doing slowly forward has a snowball effect, right? So if you're just being consistent and you're just like, even if you're doing the minimum at some points, that's still better than doing nothing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I think you touched a good point, Max. When you have a lot of thoughts in mind, just writing them down kind of helps clear your mind. And I tend to do that actually not in the morning, but at night. I realize that sometimes before I go to sleep, there's a few things that I wish I'd gotten done or that I don't want to forget the following day. So having a notebook next to you and just a pen, just like write everything down, then you can, go safely to sleep. And something that's important too is there's this common misconception that in university, you have to pull all-nighters to do well and to get good grades. I noticed quite the opposite. I think students that sleep the most, at least 8 to 9 hours a day, tend to do best on tests because they feel more resilient. They're in greater control of themselves. And I noticed for myself that really did play a key role in doing well academically and managing my time. So when I talk about productivity, I don't mean going all out every day and not sleeping. I think it's knowing exactly how much you have to do and get done in order to maximize the time you have that you're awake. So that's an important distinction I want to make.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I agree with that, is actually making sure that you're getting enough sleep. Because like, if you're not sleeping that much, that's just going to cause you to burn out really quickly.
Exactly.
Like if you're not sleeping, like it like literally makes everything harder. Like when you like, let's say if you're trying to learn something new, it's harder to retain it. It's harder to remember it because your body's like, sleep is one of the best things to actually, that I've sort of experienced in my own life, is of pushing the bar forward. Is if you're getting good sleep, you're going to be in a better mood, which is going to affect the work that you're doing, and you're going to be able to focus better. Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about, so let's talk a bit about burnout and like, have you had any burnout at university? Because you're doing a lot of stuff, like, and that's amazing. Like, you're managing all this time, and it's probably very, very stressful to do all this. Have you had any burnout, and how did you sort of manage that in university?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it requires a lot of self-awareness that I've also been trying to develop. And it's easier to look back on something and tell yourself that, oh, you did burn out, rather than in the moment when you feel like you're perfectly fine, but you might be burning out. So looking back in my experience, I would say that I've never really had like an actual burnout. Obviously, I have my highs and lows when it comes to stress and being overwhelmed. And so when I am at those peaks, usually during exam season or during like intensive recruitment cycles, what I try to do is, remain optimistic and positive, and know that, if you're in this situation, like 2 months down the road, you're going to look back at it and find it kind of insignificant and not as stressful as you did at the moment. So I try to, make everything relative to my overall state. And I think that definitely helps, minimize my emotions and the way I approach and see things. So that's definitely, it really comes down to like these mental games you play with yourself, and having the right mindset and mentality when it comes to feeling overwhelmed and anxious is the best way to be resilient and move on and keep going forward.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what I've experienced in my, myself, is managing, like, why am I feeling overstressed, or why, like, asking those questions to yourself. It's like, why am I feeling overstressed now? Is it like, because the majority of time it's like it's not really stressful, what you're going to be doing, right? Like the majority of time, it's not really stressful. You just make it stressful, and then you look back at it. Like if people can probably relate, like when you get your driver's license, when you're going, the first time you're driving, it's extremely stressful. You're going on your test, extremely stressful. And then, let's say you get your G2 or your G, and then literally, 3 to 4, not even that, like maybe like 2 to 3 weeks later, you're just like, you're very relaxed, and it's just like second nature to be driving down the road and all that sort of stuff. Right. So in the time, like you were saying, it's like, it can be very stressful, but when you look back on it, you're like, actually, that wasn't as stressful. I just made it more stressful for myself because I put more pressure than I actually needed on myself to do it.
Yeah. And even in that specific point in time when you are feeling stressed, like you said, really write down the root cause and what is making you feel that way. And once you read it, especially if you put it on paper or if you record yourself saying it, you will definitely realize that you're probably overestimating just how significant it is. And keeping things in perspective, as I mentioned, I think it really helps alleviate that burden you put on yourself.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's a great point, is actually, yeah, writing it down and then looking at it. Because let's say if you're really nervous to reach out to that person in your network, or for a job interview or something like that, and you're like, this is actually not that stressful. Like I like, you actually do the majority of like the tasks that you'll actually be doing in that interview or reaching out to people. You've already done it before, right? You've sent an email before, you've been on an interview before, you've talked to other people before. It's like, it's the exact same thing. It's just you get in your own mind. And I do that, is like, you get in your own mind and you make it a lot more stressful than it needs to be. So now I want to jump to sort of like, what are your sort of thoughts for like the future, right? You're in your second year. Have you thought about, maybe after, pursuing an MBA, or, starting straight into work, or maybe, starting your own business? What is your sort of thought process in the current moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Also something I'm figuring out as long as I continue my studies. But as of now, I think I am interested in pursuing an actual job once I graduate, and maybe pursuing a master's later on, a few years down the road. But for now, a career in consulting appeals to me the most for the reasons I previously stated. And yeah, it's something that I've been figuring out lately. And what really helps is going on these coffee chats, getting to meet people, and asking them what their experience was like, why consulting, how is it like to work at their firm, their corporate culture. And I think asking these important questions really help filter out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And so that's something I recommend for all students, whether you're in high school or in university, but especially those in university that are looking for internships and potentially a full-time job after. So yeah, right now, I'd say that's my goal. And in general, I consider myself to be quite entrepreneurial. So who knows, maybe later on in my career, I might realize and have an epiphany that I want to start my own consulting firm, or I want to create a project with global clients and pursue this specific social impact project that I care about. So I'm still not sure. And I think it's important to be open-minded. No one knows exactly what they want to do. They can tell themselves, oh, I want to do investment banking. I want to do these M&A models for the rest of my life. But a few years down the road, you're probably going to realize, no, maybe that really isn't for me. So being open-minded and leaving your options open to a certain extent, I think is important as of now in university.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I like that a lot, is like, like, I can relate that in my own experience. When I joined the army, I wanted to join the army since like 6 or 7 years old, right? And I thought I was going to be doing that for 25 years, for 25 years. A year and a half later in the army, I was like, actually, you know what? I'm more interested in business. And then, I went through like a whole route into business, and then into real estate. And then I found out about, social media and communications with podcast. And I'm loving that right now. And it's such an enjoyable thing. But, in the future, I might be like, you know what? I want to jump back to this or that, and there's nothing wrong with changing your mind, right?
Right.
There's literally nothing wrong with doing that.
But from your experience, was there something in particular that made you decide to do real estate and, not discontinue from being in the army? Like, was it a moment in time or just a general perception?
Yeah. So when I was in the army, I loved every second of it. Like, pretty much. So when I was in the army, I loved it. Like, you were getting, like, you'd be getting paid. I think like the payment over there, I think it was like like you'd be getting paid month, not biweekly. And to be honest, like, I wasn't even looking, like, the money didn't really matter anything to me, because I wasn't really spending it on anything. Like, I had nothing really to spend it on. All the expenses were like in the army, right? You have like your food and all that sort of is like super, super cheap. So I literally had no expenses. And I loved it. And I wasn't really focused on the money side of it. So, and then what happened was I started to realize that I actually started to not enjoy it. And the money started to matter more than the actual work I was doing. Which I was like, that sort of tripped something in my head, was like, why am I getting anxious and excited for getting this money in? For no, like, my expenses hadn't changed at all. I was like, why is this money starting to matter when it didn't matter before, right? Like, I loved what I was doing. And that sort of like, sort of started to realize, like, is this like something I want to do for 4 years? Am I going to enjoy this for 4 years? And that sort of like brought me down to a process of like sort of understanding, like, maybe is there another path I sort of want to go on? And that took actually a lot of time to sort of figure that out, right? Because it's like, beforehand, it's like, that's what I wanted to do, was like the military, right? And then, when I decided that actually I don't want to do the military anymore, I still love the military, and I still love, speaking to the people that are in the military. I've had, ex-military guys on the show, and I still love all that sort of nature of it and stuff. But I was like, maybe it's time to sort of leave, and if I want to come back, but experience something else. Because I joined the military, like I joined the British Army at 17 years old, right? So like I haven't really had any other experience about anything else. So taking that time to actually go and taste different things was a huge. And yeah, that was sort of the reason. Was I started to realize that I wasn't enjoying the process of the work that I was doing. And when you don't enjoy the process of the work you're doing, I sort of find in my own sort of like this, so my own perspective is that your work is going to suffer because you're not going to be able to do it to the best of your ability. And your life and mental state is going to suffer because you're just not enjoying the majority. Like work takes up the majority of your life, right? Like whatever job you choose is going to actually take up the majority of your life. And if you don't enjoy that, then that's going to affect the other parts of your life as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it also requires you to understand your own motivations as well, to make such dramatic switch. And even now, like with this podcast, don't you feel some sort of pressure to go to a more conventional job, not knowing what's going to happen a few years down the road?
Yeah. So that is something, like, when I talk to some people are like, it depends. Like they're like, oh, you should go, get a job at like, let's say like back in real estate or something like that, or maybe at a different firm or somewhere, get a job somewhere, right? Where it's like safe and, all that sort of stuff. Like I very rarely hit that from other people. And I very rarely I get that, just because I think society's more open to the idea of, like YouTube and podcasting and being, let's say a social media influencer, or doing like this other crazy stuff, like being a comedian or going to arts, or being like a freelancer is like an actual job role, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of find too is like, let's say if you're facing pressure from your parents, the weird thing I've sort of seen is that like, as soon as like, let's say if you move out, you don't really have that pressure anymore. Like they don't really care what you do as long as like, so I mean, if you move out and you're doing freelance, majority of the time, like I like, this is from like, just like sort of like my point of view is like, they sort of stop really caring because you're sort of like not in their vicinity anymore. So they're not like, oh, maybe you should get a job in this, or maybe you should get a job in that. It's like, like you've sort of proven already that you're able to move out and do something, right? So like, and then at that point, it doesn't really matter of what you do, right? Like, let's say if you want to do stand-up comedy and you're like, you go out and do stand-up comedy, maybe you're not making, $40,000 a year, $30,000 a year, or with whatever else, right? But yeah, so sort of to digress, yeah, so from my experience is that like, I haven't really faced it too much. But at the end of the day, it's your life, right? Like, why are you going to listen? Like I like a big thing I look at is, I would rather make my own decisions and fall on my own sword, as you would, like, I would rather, like, somebody might say, oh, you can do this, and this is, you're going to make you're going to make a lot more money than what you're doing now. Right. And it's going to be better, or like whatever they're going to say, it's like, oh, it's going to be better or whatever. But I sort of like to make my own decisions, and if I fail, that's my own decision, right? I don't like to fail off other people's decisions, because then I'm like, why did I listen to that person, right? And it just creates a bad effect. Like, if I fail, it's my failure, right? And I understand it. It's like, it's a failure. It's part of the process. It's part of life. You move on. You move forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. You take responsibility for your own actions and well-being.
Yeah, 100%. So I know we're coming to the end here. So where can people actually find out more about you if they want to reach out to you and talk to you about, what we discussed in this podcast in more detail?
Yeah, for sure. I'm very happy to connect with anyone on my LinkedIn. Just search up John Costa. Feel free to connect with me, message me there. You can also email me at john.costa@mail.toronto.ca. Again, I'm more than happy to help anyone where I can. More specifically, like when it comes to university, maybe recruitment, just anything that you think I could be of help.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again, John, for coming on the show. It's been amazing speaking with you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Max. Likewise.